There was no escaping the label. The name given to her at the celebration of her birth now mocks her. It wasn't always that way. The name Hannah, meaning grace or favour, was a statement from her parents of the joy that they felt when she was born into their family. She felt that grace, that favour grow when she married Elkanah as they set up their home in Ramah, in the hill country of Ephraim. Elkanah was a fine, upstanding man, blessed. He was from the tribe of Levi, and he was a part of the priestly line. And whilst not serving as a priest, Elkanah, as his name suggested, was a passionate and devout worshipper of the Lord. He'd been blessed financially, and so Hannah, favour, would be taken care of. After their first year of marriage, favour seemed to be slipping away from Hannah and Elkanah. Despite trying to have children, to build security for the future, to ensure care in their old age, to see their family line go on, it all seemed to stall. Private discussions within the family home turned to interrogations by the parents. When are you going to start having a family? People are starting to ask questions. It seems as though everywhere that they went, the gaze of the town was on them. The more they tried, the more hope slipped away. Both carried this weight, and this weight grew until something had to change. And change it did. Hannah knew it was inevitable, but it still hurt when Elkanah discussed taking another wife. But what was at stake was bigger than Hannah's feelings. And so another wedding was planned and arranged. And Peninnah joined the family. Peninnah, meaning coral or pearl, quickly made herself at home. Then the weight of shame suddenly shifted as Peninnah broke the news, "I'm pregnant." The joy on Elkanah's face cut deep into Hannah's soul. That name. Why did my parents ever call me that name? Why did they ever call me favour? And while Elkanah never stopped loving Hannah, and Hannah still loved her husband, the label, the shame of no favour by the Lord of heaven's armies hung heavy around Hannah's neck. It was now a label, a shame that Hannah carried on her own. It's her fault that they couldn't have children. She's the broken one. Perhaps she did something wrong to displease Yahweh God, and he closed her womb. It now seemed as though every time anyone in town called her by her name, it stung, it mocked, it reminded her that she was was anything but favoured. Elkanah saw the weight that she carried. He tried to do what he could, but every time he did, it was as if Peninnah saw and resented it. After all, she was the favoured one. She should be Elkanah's favourite as well. The first year for the growing family, in the first year of the growing family, they went north to the tabernacle in Shiloh. And all was going well until Elkanah distributed the meat for the peace offering. Elkanah gave Peninnah and her child their portions, but to Hannah he showed favour, giving her the choice, a double portion. Peninnah knew the rules from Deuteronomy, and while she never criticised Elkanah for his generosity, resentment towards his first wife festered. Then Peninnah's second child was conceived, and with the growth in her womb, Hannah's shame grew. It wasn't as if Elkanah and Hannah had given up trying, but with a second child on the way, Hannah wondered if God saw her pain. It was one thing to be told the stories of old, the stories of Sarah and Rachel and their struggles and their pregnancies. And while that gave Hannah some hope, some glimmer of hope, Peninnah's taunts grew more with the birth of her second child. Once again, it was time for the pilgrimage to the tabernacle to worship Yahweh. And once again, Elkanah would portion out the meat to Peninnah and their children, and then give that special piece of the offering to Hannah, showing her favour. What was once covert, hidden beneath, out of sight, on the quiet, became overt. Peninnah would taunt Hannah. The walk back from the tabernacle was a grueling journey. Peninnah flaunted her children to all that they met along the way. It was those snide comments. No. These are all my children. Hannah hasn't got any. Have you, Hannah? The shame, the label overshadowed Hannah's world. And Peninnah did everything she could to make sure it stuck. The thought of going to the tabernacle again filled Hannah with dread. She knew the stories of old. She believed Yahweh God still cared. But it was as if there was nowhere that she now felt safe, to feel relief from the label of barren, of unfavoured, of shame. Home was a constant reminder, and the festivals at the tabernacle gave no reprieve. In fact, it only seemed to magnify her plight. Peninnah would taunt Hannah and make fun of her because the Lord had kept Hannah from experiencing the favour of having children. While Peninnah was loved by Elkanah, Peninnah's fertility was used as a weapon against Hannah. Oh, Hannah dear, all Elkanah needs to do is look at me and I fall pregnant. Maybe he just doesn't look at you like that. Oh, Hannah dear, what have you done that Yahweh God would stop you from having children? Each time, Hannah would be reduced to tears and would not even eat. And while Elkanah would do his best to encourage, it wasn't his strong suit. Why are you crying, Hannah? Elkanah would ask. Why aren't you eating? Why be downhearted just because you have no children? You have me. Aren't I better than 10 sons? Prayer was the only solace for Hannah. In prayer, she could pour out her grief to God who hears. Excusing herself early from the meal, she went to the courtyard in front of the tabernacle to pray. As she prayed, her body rocked back and forth, her shoulders shook with the sobbing that spilled out from the depths of her being. In deep anguish and bitter tears, she cried out to Yahweh. Oh Lord, don't rebuke me in your anger or discipline me in your rage. Have compassion on me, Lord, for I am weak. Heal me, Lord, for my bones are in agony. I'm sick at heart. How long, O Lord, until you restore me? Return, O Lord, and rescue me. Save me because of your unfailing love. I'm worn out from sobbing. All night I flood my bed with weeping, drenching it with tears. My vision is blurred by grief. My eyes are worn out because of my enemies. And then she vowed, O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look upon the sorrow of your servant and answer your servant's prayer and give your servant a son, then I, your servant, will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime as a sign that he is dedicated to the Lord. I make this Nazirite vow over him. His hair will never be cut. A sharp rebuke broke Hannah's silent prayer. Seeing her lips move and her body shake, Eli the priest had seen her from his vantage point at the tabernacle's entrance and assumed that she was drunk. Must you come here drunk, he demanded. Throw away your wine. Oh, no, sir. I've been pouring out, not drink, not wine or anything stronger. I'm so discouraged. I've been pouring out my heart to the Lord. Don't think of me as a wicked woman. I'm a good girl, I am. And I've been praying out of great anguish and sorrow. In that case, go in peace. And may the God of Israel grant the request you have asked of him. The pouring out of tears was replaced with renewed hope. And through Eli's affirmation and encouragement, Hannah poured out thanks to Eli. The journey back home was still difficult, but for Hannah, it was as if now she carried this armour of hope that deflected Peninnah's taunts. Elkanah slept with Hannah, and Yahweh brought to mind her plea. And in due time, Hannah gave birth to a son and named him Samuel after Yahweh's name of El, the God of strength and power, the God who remembers. I asked Yahweh for him. It was almost 12 months since the last pilgrimage to Shiloh, but Hannah asked Elkanah to be allowed to stay behind. He, Peninnah, and the children could go for what would be the next 3 years to the temple, to the tabernacle to pray, to worship. Hannah wanted to wait until Samuel was weaned, and then she would take Samuel to the tabernacle and leave him there with the Lord permanently, just as she had vowed. Elkanah knew how much Hannah loved this child, how much she longed for him, and how it had changed her life. Giving Samuel up after nursing him, after seeing him take his first steps and hearing his first words would not be easy. Whatever you think is best, Elkanah agreed. Stay here for now, and may the Lord help you keep your promise. So she stayed home and nursed the boy until he was weaned. About the same time that Samuel was born, a bull was also born to the family's herd. That third year, Elkanah, Peninnah, and her children, Hannah and Samuel, all went to the tabernacle, and there a great sacrifice was offered. While God called Abraham to give his son Isaac, Hannah eclipsed Abraham by volunteering to offer Samuel to Yahweh God, not as a blood sacrifice. Their 3-year-old bull, as valuable as it was, served this purpose. But Samuel was a living sacrifice, given over to Yahweh God to serve for the rest of his days in the tabernacle, just as Hannah, the favoured one, had promised. After sacrificing the bull, they brought the boy to Eli. "Sir, do you remember me?" Hannah asked. I'm the very woman who stood here several years ago and prayed to the Lord. I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he has granted my request. Now I am giving him to the Lord, and he will belong to the Lord his whole life." And they worshipped the Lord there. Then, in only what could be really described as a musical number, Hannah takes centre stage, hands firmly on her hips as she stands vindicated before all who once saw her in shame. And it would echo through time and would be the seeds of Mary's Magnificat on the screen. Hannah spoke in a prophetic, Hannah spoke and prayed in an apocalyptic sense. And the praise goes something like this: "My heart exalts Yahweh. My victorious horn is high in my God. My mouth mocks my enemies. I rejoice in the victory you gave. For there is no one holy like Yahweh. There is no rock, there is no mountain like our God. Do not speak boastfully. Let not arrogance ooze from your mouths. For Yahweh is a God who knows. By him all deeds are measured. The bow of warriors is shattered, and those who stumble gird on strength. The rich and the self-reliant now hire themselves out for bread, while the starving grow fat on food. The barren woman gave birth to 7, full, complete. But the mothers of many now languishes. Yahweh kills and preserves life. He brings down to the grave and rescues them from it. Yahweh makes some poor and others rich. He humbles, he exalts. He raises from the dust the poor, from the dunghill he raises the needy, and seats them with princes, and makes them inherit a glorious throne. For to Yahweh belongs the pillars of the earth. He has laid the world on them. The feet of his devout he keeps, but the wicked are made silent in dark death. For not by his own strength does a person survive. Yahweh, his enemies are shattered. The Most High thunders in heaven. Yahweh judges the entire earth. May he give strength to his king. May he raise the horn of his anointed monarch. Talk about a slap down, victory lap, mic drop, all in one. Then Elkanah and Hannah returned home to Ramah without Samuel. And the boys served the Lord by assisting Eli the priest. Samuel? He was known to wear a linen garment like that of a priest. And each year his mother Hannah, who knew favour, made a small coat for him and brought it to him when she came with her husband for the sacrifice. Before they returned home, Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife Hannah and say, "May the Lord give you other children to take the place of this one she gave to the Lord." And the Lord blessed, the Lord graced, the Lord favoured Hannah, and she conceived and gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. Meanwhile, Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. The book of Hebrews in the New Testament skips over Hannah and mentions Samuel. But we won't skip over Hannah. Grace and favour. We today will remember this woman of outstanding faith. A woman who, under the weight of shame, with the cruelest of taunts, stayed true to Yahweh God. A woman who in the darkest times of her life dared to believe that Yahweh God hears the cry of her heart. A woman who willingly gave up the most precious gift ever given to her. Not because she was asked, but because she loved Yahweh, El, the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of power and strength, more than anyone or anything else in the world. The God who turns the tables on the proud and lifts up the downcast. He who sees those that society forgets or shames and sets them in a place of honour at his feast because of what his anointed has done. Let me pray. Jesus, we thank you for the story of Hannah. We ourselves have been through times of doubt and fear. We've wondered whether you hear. We cry out. Our bed is wet with tears. And yet you do hear. You are the God of power and strength. You are the God who remembers us and loves us. We thank you for all that you are, all of who you are and what you mean to us. Amen. So the story of Hannah, how do we respond to that? Well, there's a few questions that I want to pose to you today. Are there areas that you are experiencing shame or feel forgotten? What might they be? What encouragement does Hannah's faith bring for you today? What is the prayer of your heart? And lastly, what might God be saying to you today? There's going to be some music played, and as that music's played, I encourage you to do business with our holy, awesome, powerful, strong God who loves you and hears the prayers of your heart. Thanks.